My name is William Peifer. A common question that I get asked more times than I can count from my male high school students is, how do I gain weight? What they're really asking is, how do I maximize hypertrophic gains, or how do I maximize muscle mass? My scope of practice here in the state of New Jersey really doesn't limit me for the amount of nutrition advice I can give somebody. That doesn't mean I shouldn't be careful. However, there's no law that states I can or cannot give any sort of specific dietary guidelines to somebody. In order to figure out the energy requirements for an adolescent, it's different than an adult, or at least it should be. However, with a official position statement from Ben Desborough and colleagues in 2014, who are Australian dietitians, they basically state that there's no perfect equation that can figure out the energy requirements for an adolescent. Because they are still growing, still maturing, and because they are active, it can be all over the place. So they kind of just said that the adolescent should be monitored throughout the lifetime, and to see if the energy that they're taking in suffices, I guess, for whatever goals they have. So this leads me to how I figure out energy requirements for my students. I use what's called the Harris-Benedict equation, and for a male student, that is 66 plus 6.23 times weight in pounds plus 12.7 times height in inches minus 6.8 times age in years. And this gives us their basal metabolic rate, or how many of the calories they're burning just sitting around doing nothing. We need to factor in also activity level with that. So for example, for a moderately active adolescent or individual, take the basal metabolic rate times 1.55, and that gives us how many calories they need to consume to maintain their weight. Obviously, they're trying to gain weight. In order for them to gain weight, or muscle tissue needs energy to grow. So typically I add 500 calories on top of that. And the reason why I do that is because the Forbes equation states that a 500 calorie reduction from basal metabolic rate or positive gain from basal metabolic rate will result in 1 pound of body mass per week. So figure out the basal metabolic rate plus 500 should theoretically gain 1 pound of body mass per week. From there, we need to figure out macronutrients. Macronutrients can be manipulated to increase fat, increase muscle, so on and so forth. Probably, as far as weight gain, one of the biggest macronutrients for that is carbohydrates. Since carbohydrates are a nutrient store, meaning they help store fat, they help store muscle glycogen. By having an optimal amount of carbohydrates, we limit the amount of muscle tissue loss, because there is a proper amount of muscle and liver glycogen to fuel the body. So this can help with muscle gain. In a review article by Lois Burke and colleagues in 2011, they reviewed a lot of their own research and other research surrounding carbohydrate consumption for adolescents. And one of the pieces was focusing on carbohydrates throughout the day, and they found that 5 to 7 grams per kilogram of body weight was sufficient for adolescents to maximize muscle and liver glycogen. What this looks like on a 146-pound adolescent, that's 66.3 kilograms. That's about 325 to 462 grams per day. Based off of a 2,500 calorie diet, let's say for this individual, that's 52 to 74% of overall calories come from carbohydrates. Some limitations with this study. Since there's so many factors that can influence muscle and liver glycogen, it's really hard to pinpoint if that 5 to 7 grams is maybe a little bit too high, a little bit too low. Probably it is right on, considering the RDA for carbohydrate for an adult is around 45% to 65% of overall calories. So we're kind of in that range. Protein is another macronutrient we need to figure out. Arnholtz and colleagues in 2011 conducted a 3-year energy and macronutrient profile on 60 male and female sprint athletes. They did a 1 week, twice a year nutrition profile over the course of 3 years. What I like to focus on is body fat percentage, weight gain in relation to, and relate that to protein that these individuals are consuming, or males more specifically. So the body fat percentage for males in the spring of 2006 was about 10.2%. Fast forward in 3 years to fall 2008, body fat percentage went down to 7.9%. During the spring of 2006, weight gain went from 57.9 kilograms, or 127 pounds, to the fall of 2008, went up to 66.4 kilograms, or 146 pounds. So you see a reduction in body fat percentage while an increase in weight gain. That means that somewhere along the line, body fat went down while lean mass went up. It was noted that during the 3 years, the average protein consumption was 1.5 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. And that would be considered a high protein diet, considering that the RDA for protein is about 0.8 grams per kilogram. So I think with the higher protein diet may have something to do with a decrease in fat loss while having an increase in lean mass gain. What this looks like on a 146-pound individual or 66.3 kilogram person, that's about 100 grams to 126 grams of protein per day. And from a 2,500 calorie diet, it's about 16 to 20% of calories coming from protein. I went with protein a little bit higher because some other studies say that 1.9 grams per kilogram of body weight per day is sufficient for a novice bodybuilder, so I adjusted a little bit higher. Some limitations with this study is that it wasn't conducted on strength athletes, it was conducted on sprint athletes. Now, they're both anaerobic activities, however, it would have been better if it was conducted on strength athletes to have a better correlation. Lastly, the last macronutrient we need to figure out is fat. What's important here is that for a male, testosterone is crucial for mass gain. Joanne Dorgan and colleagues in 1996 did a study on androgen levels in 43 male ages 19 to 53 years old, and they were assigned two different diets. One was a high protein or high fat, low carbohydrate. The other one was a low fat, high carbohydrate. The low fat or the high fat diet consisted of 40% of the calories coming from fat, while the low fat diet consisted of 19% of the calories coming from fat. They did a diet for 10 weeks, in which case they did a 2-week wash and then transition diets, and they did this opposite diet for 10 weeks. And what they found, individuals that were on a high fat diet had a 12 to 15% increase in androgen levels. What that could do is correlate to mass gain, because now we have more testosterone and androgen hormones in the body, and that could help a male increase lean mass or muscle tissue. So what this would look like on a 2,500 calorie diet for a 146-pound individual with already carbohydrates and protein figured out, this would give us remaining 10 to 32% of the calories coming from fat. That's about 27 to 88 grams per day. Limitations with this study, because the age range was so vast and androgen levels tend to decrease over time as we get older, it would have been better if the study was conducted on a smaller age range, preferably, younger individuals, let's say maybe even late adolescent years to early adulthood, probably would have been better. So some big practical takeaways from this. Number one, we have to figure out energy requirements. That's first and foremost as far as weight gain, weight loss, weight maintenance, whatever. Figure out energy requirements. So we figure that out, add 500 calories to that, and theoretically the individual should gain weight. We can manipulate calories or macronutrients, and in order to do that, we got to figure out some ranges. Some practical ranges. So for protein, I said, for an example, based off these studies, 16 to 20%. It'd probably be a little bit more feasible to have it around 20%, maybe 17% of overall calories come from protein. Carbohydrates, based off the study that I gave, 52 to 74%. 74% maybe a little bit high. Definitely high probably for an adult, but for an adolescent, still kind of up in the air. Practical takeaway with that, maybe keep the calories from carbohydrates 55 to 65% of the overall calories there. And then lastly, fat. Since fat can help with testosterone production, maybe keep fat a little bit higher, 25 to 30% of overall calories coming from fat. So those are the big takeaways. Figuring out calories, manipulate the macronutrients, and monitor throughout the time on the diet to see if the diet is working appropriately. Thank you.